Well, wonderful. Well, I'm happy to have you all with us this morning. I am uh, joining the webinar from Baltimore, Maryland, and Justin, you are joining the webinar from
Nagasaki, Japan?
Nagasaki, Japan. So it's 10 p.m. for Justin. It is 8 a.m. for me, and for many of you else joining. I know that we had registrations from literally around the world, every continent except for Antarctica, though we are trying. I sent some notes out to see if we can get some people to join. But thank you very much for joining us. This webinar will be recorded. We'll make sure that is published and sent to all attendees that registered today. So if you're paying half attention, I promise you'll be able to go back and to review any of the great things that we have shared. I want to thank Justin for being willing to talk about this. I think this is a really great topic for kind of the current time that we're in and the various challenges that we have in assessing students. Justin, as you'll find, has been doing this for longer than any other kind of solution out there, working with many institutions in order to bolster their oral assessment, language learning, and his experience and product are very relevant to the topic that we have. I want to thank Justin, obviously, for joining, my team for helping to spread the word, BrainStation 23 and eLearning 23, and of course, we are all certified partners with Moodle Learning Management System, which now serves over 500 million students worldwide. So thank you very much to the Moodle team for amplifying our message, for sharing this webinar. And if you are a Moodle.com email address holder in the attendees list, thank you very much for attending today and helping us. As we are proceeding, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. We may hold those to the end. If I can ask them, you can throw them in the Q&A. That'll come to me and Justin, and we'll make sure that we have a line on those things to ask those questions. Feel free to interject. Just because of the potential lag, I don't want to make this like a really stop and start, but we will try to make some time for and make space for questions. Justin, as you see questions come in, easy to answer, feel free to jump on those. We are going to talk about oral assessment today, but I would be a really terrible business person if I did not mention that we do have for writing, Cursive is available for Moodle users and now through a Chrome extension as well. If you're interested in supporting writing, our goal is to make a better writing environment of Moodle, which we've done, and provide that to the Moodle community, and then provide full transparency into the writing process. So see every paste, see the revisions that students are making, make sure that we are having a full account of how students are learning. We also have, this is part of a series, so this is the second. The first was AI feedback with Marcus Green. Today, obviously, talking about oral assessment. Coming up in March, we'll be doing a talk about fraud triangle. This is tentative with Dr. Mark Glynn. And then in May, creating assessments using generative AI with Jason Neffer and Jason Goya. So stay tuned for those. We'll make sure that registration links are sent to the registrations for this webinar in the case that you're curious about those in the future. So today we're going to cover a quick history of oral assessment, kind of hit the highlights. I'm not a scholar of oral assessment. We'll talk about it in kind of like oral assessment and oral activities when and through mediated by learning management systems, which is where kind of Justin's experience is really relevant. We'll talk about oral assessment activities now in the age of AI. We'll kind of cover what's out there from tools, what's happening in the industry, what's happening by faculty directly. And then we'll also kind of cover the most recent features for Justin's software called Poodle and how AI has been integrated into that pre-ChatGPT, but also kind of what is available and what's possible now. And then we'll also cover, of course, there are low-tech and no-tech solutions for Moodle or Canvas or your learning management system that you might be able to implement today to facilitate oral activity or oral assessment. And we'll have time for Q&A. So lots of agenda, but we will try to move right along. So a little bit of brief history, and with the caveat that I am not an oral assessment scholar. I think when we think of kind of oral assessment as it's evolved, we all kind of think back to the Socratic method and discourse in 2,000 plus years ago. So we're thinking is like groups of people having discussions, kind of testing their theories, testing their thinking process through oral presentation, through discussion. Um, Fast forward to kind of the dawn of universities, and we had this idea of medieval disputations. Or a disputation is a kind of another word for an argument facilitated. Usually there was a faculty or like a expert judge, but sometimes between a junior student and a more senior student in terms of like having that conversation. So a little bit more like a one-on-one, a little bit more like what we think about today. Fast forward is that we have a kind of a shift to written assessment, right? So better implementation or better implements, right? Pencils, pens, being able to write, lots of more paper. We have the opportunity to kind of write this down, to take time with some of these things, to really move towards from oral literacy to written literacy. And writing really kind of takes center stage, where oral assessment never goes away, but artifacts and kind of like the way that we're creating this, the shift more towards scientific pursuits and math and science and chemistry and all of these other things, right? Requiring a little bit more than just being able to talk things through. Fast forward kind of 1850s is like we think of the Industrial Revolution here in the West, kind of happening around the world. A lot of emphasis on objectivity, on scale, industrialization, standardization of assessments. You start to make, kind of like standardized testing becomes more in vogue. Standardized testing not inclusive of oral assessment, and kind of see things more. Still oral assessment, it exists, but really the focus on assessment has been written. Now, looking back to kind of 1990 when I start to go, by my experience is that oral assessment really is like you might get in front of the class and do a presentation, but a lot of the assessment is through either mediated through I'm first writing it out on a computer, I'm printing something out, I have a artifact, it's written assessment, but you're starting to see oral assessment or oral activities kind of grow in number through computers. Now, that's evidenced by language labs, kind of, you go to a lab, you go to a computer, you use a specific piece of software. I put headphones on, I have a microphone, I'm doing Rosetta Stone style kind of pronunciation. I am working through assessments in a much more kind of like structured way. The language lab is really great evidence of this, and learning management systems have kind of facilitated this. And then fast forward 2022, I think it's an arbitrary delineation, but I think is like we can think of kind of pre-ChatGPT and post-ChatGPT in terms of how things operated in our lives. At least for me, that's how I am thinking of things. We see this kind of like a reaction to, if we can't put a full reliance on the written word, especially if you're not using cursive. If you can't put a reliance on the written word, is like, what do we do? How do we know that students are learning? So this kind of, that paired with kind of the new potential of generative AI to make more interactivity and to really kind of facilitate this discourse, either written or oral, as students are kind of like engaging with artificial intelligence and computer systems in ways that we can see transparently and measure and facilitate. Right? So that's kind of the history that we're going to start with. And now I'm actually going to kick it over to Justin to give us a kind of a history, and what you'll see is, I hope, is some parallels for Poodle as things continue.
Excellent. Let me share my screen. Just confirm, Joe, that you can see that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks very much for the introduction and for talking about those things, because it's a really good lead up to what I'm going to talk about, which is in that period that you talked about, the digitization of oral activities, because it all began for me in the early 1990s as well. I was at university, and that's an actual photograph of me, but generated by OpenAI, because we didn't have color pictures back then. And I was studying Russian. I do these oral exams every semester, every year. And you sit outside the corridor, perhaps in a line of students, and we'd go in there, and we'd, quite stressful, and we'd talk to the teachers. And our practice speaking actually was not any better than that. We had very few opportunities to speak. And then We go forward a few years, and I'm actually in Japan. So I came to Japan to teach English, and I was now on the other side of the door. I was giving the oral exams to the students, and they'd all stay in the classroom. They'd come out into the corridor, and we'd spend 2 or 3 minutes talking, and I'd quickly, scribble some notes and a score, and the student would go back. There's no opportunity for feedback, and it was again quite stressful, and very limited opportunities for one-on-one sessions with students. But they actually enjoyed it, but it was very basic. And then a few years later, I went into the wilderness and worked in a Japanese software company doing various things. But I went back to teaching, and the school I was teaching in had a very big language lab, and a bit like the language labs that you had, Joe, but these were digital versions of those. And they had the same feature sets. You'd read it, you'd speak into the microphone, it would play back what you'd heard, and you could kind of self-evaluate. But it was really just a digital version of the old analog language labs. It brought over the same limitations that the analog language labs had. There's no ability for the teacher to give feedback, for the student to see their own progress when they came back between this week after week. And this idea of moving from analog to digital, really, you just bring forward the limitations without making the most of the new opportunities that you have in digital. So it was kind of a bad idea, and I had the same idea. I thought, well, maybe I can make a Moodle version of a language lab, and that's kind of where it started. But again, that was really a bad idea, because we didn't need to recreate this kind of this monolithic one place where you go and do language learning. Moodle offers us a lot more opportunities. So what I actually began using was Moodle. I hadn't used Moodle up until that point, and I started to create language learning activities, with a particular focus on audio and video inside Moodle. So most of what we're going to talk about today is actually Moodle related, but the concepts, of course, refer to other things as well. So Poodll, the company that I founded back then, is a set of plugins and extensions for Moodle that enable good language learning. And it started off with Adobe Flash, because everything had to be in Flash back in the 2012s and 13s. There wasn't HTML5 as there is now. And audio and video recording was very difficult to do. You needed streaming servers. It wasn't supported by mobile phones. We had lots of connectivity issues. So it was a difficult thing to do, but we were able to add audio and video recording features to the quiz question type, the assignment, and the submission, and onto the HTML editor. And the UI looked like that. That's the actual UI. And then Steve Jobs got on stage and said they're going to come out with an iPhone and they weren't going to support Flash, and that basically killed Flash. So we had to, me and everybody who was doing things back then, including Fred from Big Blue Button, and we all kind of had to kind of redo what we had done in HTML5, and it was a very patchy landscape. Things didn't work on iPhones. If it wasn't Chrome, it was it might or it might not work. The video and audio file formats were inconsistent, but it did work. And as the browser landscape and support for the different features came on board, it's now fully fledged. You can do all of the things consistently across the different browsers. It's a very good environment to work in. But it looked like this, in audio video recorders. That's a shadow audio video recorder there. I'm going quickly because I want to get back to what people want to see, which is the cool new AI stuff. So bear with me. But then we had the early AI things, and early AI was nothing like what we have now. It's basically audio and video transcription. And though it's a simple feature, it actually added the ability for us to do make quite interesting and interactive activities, which are still used now. People still enjoying them. A very basic one was this speech cards, where the student would read what was on the card and then would show at the top what the student had said and move on to the next card. Actually, it's funny because I actually see the person who was using these and gave me a message back then to say that her students were saying Donald Trump is a dick. Not because it was on the card, but because they wanted to see it written out on top, And that's when I realized, we shouldn't really write the mistranscriptions into the little box up there. So along the way, we've learned lots of little things, like little anecdotes and things that have made the product, better. You wouldn't see it because it's been, fixed to that extent, but lots going on. In the speaking assignments, we added the ability to put a transcript and for the students to see their transcript and teachers to see the transcript, which is good for both ends. This is another plugin, Poodle English Central, where they have loads of videos, authentic English videos like 20,000 of them, all marked up as lessons, and the student can speak and practice speaking the lines that are in the video alongside the video and get feedback on their speaking. And then we have this one here, which is a Poodle one, Poodle Read Aloud. This is where the student reads the passage, and then we can tell which words were read correctly and which words were not. We can mark those up and give them the opportunity to practice those words. And just using that basic kind of ability to turn speech into text, we can build these quite nice activities. But since then, as we all know, lots has happened because we've now got generative AI and we've got ChatGPT and OpenAI. And that's changed things a great deal. And that's what I'm going to talk about in the second part of this presentation. So I'll hand it back to Joe at this point. No, we'll stop sharing. How do I stop sharing? Stop sharing.
Awesome. Wonderful. Bingo. I did not have the mispronunciation of our president on my bingo card this morning, but filled that one in. Okay, so where we left off with Justin is basically like now we have kind of like all the components that are started to piece together in order to facilitate what might be kind of like live or more interactive oral assessment. And I think that the examples that Justin gave you can see is kind of like an ever evolving and like more complex versions of oral assessment for language acquisition that are occurring with high precision and using tools that are just not LLM based, right? But when we start to add on additional components, we get a lot more potential for how we structure and what we're doing. And so the things that were the kind of foundational, as Justin and I were talking and preparing about this, we were talking about kind of like the layered approach of like how the foundation was created. First, we have to have web-based facilitation of classes, right? Some aspects of class are facilitated by the web, right? So we have Moodle, other learning management systems kind of setting where now I have a place for my class that's digital. We have kind of like the audio recording and the advances in computer hardware and software to kind of collect this information and to store it, right? It's like that was, I can remember my 1985 computer. I think the entire memory was probably as large as like a one MP3 file, right? So it's like you have like this evolution of kind of the facilitation of creating lots of media, being able to store that, being able to serve that back, low latency and high bandwidth. The transcription services, right? So it's like this idea that you can move from audio right directly to text with high precision, also allowing for more natural language processing to leverage that input data in order to market, to kind of show students where to focus and what to do, what to practice on. And then lastly is kind of this idea where you can move from text to speech, right? So a computer voice or the audio being provided where it's not a recording of a teacher that just plays, it's actually reading of that text or creating the text and reading that text for the student to interact with. So, those kind of foundational components add on kind of the potential of learning management or learning large language models and generative AI, and you have much more potential for interactivity. And that's kind of where we're at. So as we think of these things, what I wanted to call attention to also is that there are other groups and other opportunities out there where you can get kind of intentionally created apps or websites or tools in the edtech ecosphere. They are very new. There's already been some that have kind of like come onto the market and already failed, right? So there's like this idea of AI powered oral assessment, taking all those foundational components that kind of Justin showed, the evolution of Poodle. Now with LLMs, they're doing these things much more like if you were to pull up and just start talking to ChatGPT or talking to Gemini in that mode where it's more conversational. So there's 5 different kind of things here. That's not exhaustive, but the ones that I track and I look at kind of plagiarism detection, AI detection, process tracking tools, and I've started to also look at kind of like where are we at from an oral assessment perspective. But as we were kind of thinking of the reaction for LLMs and like ChatGPT, it's really is a reaction to the fact that I think a lot of people don't trust just the static writing anymore, which you can't or which you haven't seen actually in the creation process. So if students aren't writing out of class, how much credence do I give to that? If I can orally assess the students, maybe I have more confidence in the student doing that they know something, that they've learned something, that they're experts in this particular concept or for this assignment. So there's Socratic Mind, Mirror Talk, Orazio, Sherpa. Three of those are actually student directed. So they come from Georgia Tech or from other institutions where they're trialing these kind of concepts as a transparent way to kind of see the transcriptions of the text, see what was asked, see how the student answered those questions. Some of them provide automated marking. Some of them are just providing a kind of like encapsulated transcript to the teachers to do the marking. Lots of different opportunities here, but it is much more as like this kind of idea of a conversational assessment based on some either concept that's preset by the teacher or an upload file or something like that by the student. Most recently, actually in December, there was, this made the rounds pretty, at least I read it in several different places and kind of saw this, but there's a teacher experiment where it kind of calls himself a CS teacher at a business school using 11 Labs, which is kind of one of the, I would say, it's one of the most valuable of the kind of like language LLMs or tools that are out there, high valuation, but they're really low cost from an API perspective, using that to do essentially what was mirrored after like a cold calling exercise. So able to basically use cold calling to connect with the students. Students signed up for some time, and then it was very intentionally kind of asking them a set of questions based on a very rigorous prompt. All of this is available through both GitHub, but also, and this is very long kind of explanation of what occurred, including research and survey data from the students that were participant in this program later. So we'll cover a little bit of what they learned, but lots of activity here, which is what we wanted to, what I wanted to make sure is that there's like there are lots of people working on kind of this reaction and how oral assessment might fit into kind of our moving forward in assessment in all levels of education. And so with that being said, I wanted to go back to Justin, and the real reason that I had him on the webinar today is that I actually think that Justin's been at this for so long that he has perfect timing now for how and what we're at today. So the tools exist, they're very, very good, and I will let him explain kind of like where Poodle could fit in and potentially fill the need for this type of oral assessment.
Great. Excellent. Now I just noticed my microphone, it keeps kind of dying. It's a USB one. It's quite old. It's a good one. It's a Blue Yeti. So if my mic dies, I'm going to notice it and let you know. If I don't notice it, start waving at me, Joe. Okay, so before I launch into a quick demonstration of minilesson, which is the tool I'm going to be showing today, because it's got many features in it, I want to talk about a couple of the concerns that I have and have had about using AI for assessment, because our users have been talking to us about this for quite a long time, before ChatGPT even, and I've never, even to this day, I'm not that thrilled about it being used for kind of any kind of assessment with stakes. So the four kind of issues that I have are the black box, the consistency, the quality, and the human factor. The black box problem is a student submits something, an audio or a written assignment or something, into the AI, and they come back, and it comes back with a score for them. But how was the grade calculated? And another way of looking at that is, how do we evaluate if the AI actually worked correctly? Or how do we tell the students, based on what was received back from the AI, how they should improve? What kind of feedback can we give them about this? And I think this is a problem that can't actually be solved. And I think most of the problems that I'm talking about here can't be solved. They just need to be something that we are aware of when we're building these tools. And they're also something that teachers and educators need to be aware of when they're delivering these kind of assessments. That the benefits are truly there for the AI assessment, but there's also these things we need to kind of pay attention to. Consistency. So, the 2 p.m., the same assignment gets a different grade to what they got at 3 p.m. or at 5 p.m. or, basically an equivalent assignment or submission comes out with different grades. So what kind of precision are we really claiming for our tool? So when we see these kind of like these flash dials and they the student says something that whirs up and they get 33% or 35%, I'm never really convinced. I don't think we have precision at that level. How do we deal with that? Quality, a human rater might give it 58%, but an AI might give it 63%. So how close to the human rater is the AI rating? And finally, the human factor. So when I was teaching in high school, the students would write essays, or give oral assessments or oral submissions about their weekend to me. And it was important to them that I was going to listen to it and I was going to give them some feedback. They would try hard because they knew that I was going to listen to it. It was a kind of a human relationship in the teacher and the student relationship. But with AI, of course, it's not there. And so I don't know that we can trust students are really going to be using the system sincerely. They're going to be doing things like Donald Duck is a dick, simply because it's good grammar, and they might actually pass. We have students in India who would recite songs or the words of songs like Bob Dylan and Bruce Springsteen into the audio, get a perfect score because the grammar was 100% correct and all the AI was doing was checking the grammar. So it's this kind of thing that we need to consider. Okay. Having said that, let's go and have a look at the cool stuff that we can do, and I'll show you a little bit to where it's on the screen. I'll show you how we deal with some of these problems when they arise. So this is Poodle mini lesson, what it looks like. And I'm just going to go over to my demo site now. And here's a mini lesson here. What I want to say here is I'm going to show you around mini lesson, but feel free to come to the demo site yourself, demo.poodle.com, and try out all the stuff there. It resets every day at 9 a.m. Japan time, which is about 12 hours from now. And everything I see there, you see me doing, you'll be able to do too. I can't show you everything in mini lesson in the few minutes that I have, so I'll just introduce it and then you can do it yourself. Right, so this is a mini lesson, and we've got, in this case, we've got 7 items or 7 questions. It's a bit like a quiz, and we combine the different item types to make a lesson. And what kind of item types do we have? Let's go and have a look at the lesson items here. If I click on add item, we'll see the list. And we can see here a content page, multi-choice dictation. For many people, it's a bit confusing straight away. They don't know what each of these things do. But if you click on the item, you'll see a little animated GIF that shows that item in action. So in this case, it's speech cards. The student says what's on the card. It zips away, and we get another speech card. Listen and speak is what it sounds like there. The student hears something, then they try to reproduce what they've just heard, and we show them whether they were correct or incorrect. Listening gapful, that's a dictation. They'll hear something, and they should type in what they heard, and we'll tell them if what they typed was correct or incorrect. Free speaking, this is where I'm going to demonstrate, this is where the student says something and we don't know what they're going to say in advance. It's not dictation or anything like that. Based on the AI, we're going to give them an evaluation and a grade. Similar tools, free writing, fluency, I'm also going to demonstrate that, and audio chat, I'm going to demonstrate those as well. Here they are here. So fluency, this is a pronunciation tool. Free speaking, this is a open speaking assessment tool. And audio chat is a audio chat bot. Let's go and have a look at this right away. So here is our fluency activity. And in this case, we've just got the one activity inside the mini lesson, so we don't see all the different steps.
Он посещает Китай.
I put it into Russian so we can kind of experience it as a non-native speaker would experience it. So my job is to repeat what I've just heard. So let's do that. Он посещает Китай. It might have been better to refresh the page because actually this has been open for a long time, waiting for me to do the activity. Let me just come back in on a refreshed page. Sorry about that.
Он посещает Китай.
Он посещает Китай. Okay, so in that case, I got everything correct, and that's actually not a great demonstration. Let me just go and show you what should happen. So what should happen is the student makes some mistakes. And when they do that, first of all, on the top right, we're going to see the original model audio, but also the opportunity is here for them to hear their own audio again and compare it to that original audio. So this is very much like those old language lab we were talking about before. And here we've got a 5-star rating. So instead of giving them 37% or 35%, this is coming back to that issue of precision. We don't try to pretend that we've got more accuracy or precision in the testing process than we actually do. So 33% and 35%, they're basically the same. So we're going to give them the same score on that 5-star rating. And then in terms of, what do they do with this information? How do they improve? Well, we try to show that in the words here. So we can see where the word is correct, he, where the word was incorrect or not spoken that well, and even which parts of the word were not spoken that well. We've color-coded those. So that's using the Microsoft Speech SDK. It's really, really good for doing these things, and it's a great way for students to practice pronunciation by themselves inside Moodle. And we try to cover some of those concerns that we saw before. Now, another tool that we have, another one I want to show you. This is the free writing activity that I think I briefly mentioned. Free speaking and free writing, they basically work the same way. We just pass a submission into the AI and then we get back the results. So in this case, I've already prepared this text here, but the question is, how are cats different to elephants? And my response is, cats, they super different to the elephant. They have the little pink nose and it's a cute one, but the elephant has a super big nose. Actually, it's a nice one. So it's not great English, and we'll see how the AI responds to that. Okay, so we can see it's given us some metrics here. So the number of sentences, the number of words, the number of unique words, and then the relevance. So we've actually been able to establish the relevance of my speaking to the topic. That's important to cover that case where the student was being insincere in speaking into the microphone the words of a song that was not related to the task at hand. We're also giving them corrections on their speaking so they know how they should have spoken or how they might speak better if they were to do this again. Again, we've got that 3-star rating. And in this case, we've given them feedback. And the feedback, here it's in English. If we just jump over here, I think I can show you an example where the feedback is coming in Japanese. So we can specify, we can have the Moodle know what the native language of the learner is, so they get their feedback in their language. So a Japanese speaker in your class will get Japanese feedback, but a Vietnamese speaker in the same class can get that feedback in Vietnamese. So it's a more effective way of giving feedback to learners. At a certain point, they probably want to get the feedback in English, but certainly when they're younger or beginning, that level of feedback is good if it comes in the native language. And now the last thing I want to show you is, so I haven't got that much time. So I'm going to show you a free speaking activity followed by an audio chat activity. So let's do the free speaking first. So I'm being asked here to choose one of the characters of the movie Titanic, Jack, Rose, or Cal, explain their role in the movie, and give my opinion about them. So I'm going to talk about Cal. He's the bad guy. I'm just going to refresh my page because we don't have the issue that we just had a few minutes ago. I'm going to talk about the character from the movie Titanic, Cal. He was the fiance of Rose, and he paid for the trip on the boat. And everybody thinks he's bad, but I think it's okay because Jack was trying to steal his fiance. So it wasn't very good, was it? But Cal, he was walking around with a gun and shooting, and he was trying to drown things, and he took a place on the lifeboat when maybe he shouldn't have. So he didn't do all the good things, but I think maybe he wasn't as bad as, I think Jack was worse. Okay, so that's my submission. And let's see how the AI handles that. Takes a little while to come back. Okay, so the relevance of my speaking was great, 90%, so that's good. And I didn't make very many grammatical mistakes, so it hasn't done, it's given me some some corrections, which is quite nice. Got the audio back, got my 5-star rating, and it's given me some feedback about my speaking. So that's the free speaking. Now, how we get those ratings is we pass in prompts specifically related to this task, which is the Titanic and those users. So you'll still be able to use and will have to use your prompting skills to get the right results. But the results are pretty good, I think you can see. Now, where it gets interesting, and this is coming back to the conversational assessment that Joe was mentioning before, and I know I'm nearly out of time for my speaking portion, but I want to show you this. Is now we're going to pass my submission that was given to AI to grade. We're going to pass it into the audio chat, and then the audio chat is going to perform a conversational assessment on what I just spoke about. So let me just press start. It takes about 15 seconds to connect to all the servers. This is a requirement. It's using something called RTC, firewall traversal. So bear with us, but when it comes back, it should be good.
Hello, I'm Alloy, your language teacher. Today we're going to talk about one of the characters from the movie Titanic. You chose Cal. Let's discuss your thoughts about him and see if we can explore his character a bit more. You mentioned that Cal was not all bad because Jack was trying to win Rose's heart. Do you really think Cal's actions were justified? What about his behavior on the ship?
I thought his behavior on the ship was excessive, but, somebody was trying to steal his fiancée, and that's not good, is it?
It's understandable that Cal felt upset about losing Rose. But do you think his actions, like walking around with a gun and trying to take a place on a lifeboat, were really the right thing to do? Could he have handled the situation differently? What do you think about how he treated Rose and his relationship with her?
I'm just going to end there because we haven't got that much time. I think you can see how that's going. So yeah, she's going to give me a little interview about my responses on the previous step, and of course the previous step could be a written submission as well, not just an oral submission. And we get feedback, and actually in the results we also give a little bit of extra feedback for the teacher about how this assessment was arrived at, this 4 out of 5 stars. So yeah. So those are the 3 activities I wanted to show you. I know we ran out of time, but please go to the demo site. Those activities are mostly all on the demo site, so you can try them there. And I'm interested to see how you think about that.
That's awesome. And that activity particularly was one of the reasons why I was so excited to talk to Justin, because I think it's like what we're seeing requested, as we're talking to teachers is like, one is I think there's this the potential of using the kind of submission from a student, right? So like a 5-page paper, 10-page paper, a research paper, in a sense is like the quick way to start to assess whether the students have participated in the creation of that paper would be to start to quiz them on it. So if you have existing corpus from the student and it can be kind of parsed and used in a way where they could directly have a conversation with AI about that paper, you can start to collect additional kind of checks on this process. Now, I've seen this kind of approach to authorship verification from in both like Close and just multiple choice questions. So kind of like take the paper, pull a couple questions, serve those to the students immediately as a way to kind of gauge this. But I think the conversational aspects are, in a sense, provide a kind of limitless opportunity here for trying to know a little bit more about the student and their participation in that work. So that was just kind of like that. I think is to drive the point home. I think that's the infrastructure, kind of the components, all of those things exist. It's just a matter of the right implementation using a tool like Poodle to make that work for your classroom. And the benefit is that you have kind of full control over what the type of questions are, kind of the length of the questions, how the students are accessing that, plus a full transcript of that conversation for the student as they have it. So it's not, while they might get a rating kind of like in line of it, in a sense, you can continue to keep yourself in the loop of the evaluation as you're looking at both kind of the submission from a student and the transcript from their interactivity with the oral assessment. Those could be 2 grades. One could just be a requirement as a check, but really gives a lot more flexibility as you're kind of considering how to do this. So now, that being said, I think we had to kind of like, Justin gave some really great caveats, which I appreciate. I think is that like all of those things are what we worry about in terms of how we're implementing new LLM-based or generative AI tools. But so we wanted to kind of like wrap that up in the last couple minutes that we have. So one is like, if you're switching from written assessment and if you're curious about oral assessment these days, just realize this is a big change, right? It's the change in format should be considered with kind of full gravity, right? This is it will require big shifts in kind of thinking about this and allowing space for this, giving time to this, and orienting students around how do they be successful in doing these things, right? It's kind of changing the stakes on them. So big change. The other is to think is whether if you're replacing one assessment with another, just like a one-for-one swap from written assessment to an oral assessment, are any of the learning outcomes or learning objectives, are they changing in a way, right? Because it's like the oral assessment or me getting up here and doing a webinar, I also could write a blog post about oral assessment. Are those exactly the same, or are those very different in terms of the objectives and kind of the things that I'm going to relay? It is a completely different mode of assessment. So if it's a add-on, just keep in mind that it's an add-on to an existing assessment is another way to get information from students about what they know and what they're thinking. But it's a completely different mode, requires completely different tools or different time during your classes, all of those things. In the study where the teacher facilitated kind of the cold calling, they also followed up with survey information. And so students are also impacted by this. As you start to levy oral assessment or consider using it in the classrooms, keep in mind that students are kind of the direct, they are participant in this, they are impacted by it, they will be affected by it. Now, most of it, in this particular study, most students did not like it. Most wanted to go back to just the written assessments. 83% thought that the oral assessment, even when it was mitigated through AI, it was actually not like a person and it was through the phone. They found it much more stressful. So it's like that. Maybe that's the intent in terms of like how things are shifting. But keep in mind is like students are going to have opinions about this. Orienting them towards these things, I think, is going to be helpful. I wouldn't make oral assessment be like a one and done. The only time that you use oral assessment is for a high stakes exam. I would say is like there's probably opportunity for more oral assessment across courses if you're trying to implement it effectively. And then lastly, I wanted to touch on is like that this requires additional training and additional kind of planning as you're working through this, because there's significant risk for subjectivity and there's significant risk for bias. And that can be whether the student is what language is their first language, their gender, their confidence, right? We're not trying to ascertain like how forceful and how energetic a student is about the particular topic. We're trying to assess, do they know something? And those are not the same. So as we're thinking about this, just keep in mind is that we may have some personal and implicit bias towards certain way that people are saying something. And that is, if we can move towards objectivity, that's why I like the potential of like transcription of the audio is a way to kind of use this as a way to see like what is the actual words, what are the phrases that a student is using. But keep in mind that a transcription of somebody where English is their second language versus a transcription of somebody who is a fluent and natural English, a native English speaker, are going to have different word variety. The transcripts are going to be different from the complexity of the sentences. So there's a lot of kind of consideration that needs to occur as you're thinking about oral assessment, including all of the caveats that Justin gave about the black box and kind of like the how students are affected, how they change their assessment and their creation process. Now, Poodle is a great, like totally amazing. Could facilitate this among like 35 different additional activities. I'm not even sure what the full count is of things that you can do with Poodle. Many, many, many things. But there are other low stakes, no stakes ways to do this. Obviously, if you have the opportunity of delivering your class face to face, making time to cold call students or to talk to students, or we saw the kind of the image of Justin and how oral assessment happened just in the hallway, one at a time, just a couple minutes with students. By all means, take that advantage and work with students to understand more about what they're learning, what they know. There are also some low tech, no tech solutions. So Justin and I actually, our first interaction was building YouTube Anywhere from Moodle text editor. You could click a button, it would open, and it would record video directly to YouTube. It was unlisted link, and it would embed that directly into the submission. So it's a way to capture information. YouTube, if you just go to YouTube, or if students do it on their phone, you can create an asynchronous way to kind of capture this information as well. You could FaceTime them. You could use any of the video calling and actually ask students to kind of pick up the phone. Obviously, a voice phone call also would work, but you'd have to hope that students these days answer rather than insist on kind of texting. So I would say just to keep that in mind. Many of your institutions also probably have conference call technology like Zoom or WebEx or Google Meets. Leveraging that for one-on-one interactivity with students and kind of getting it through a Zoom with just 5 or 10 minutes. I would say the main things, or the allure that I see for kind of AI mediated oral assessment, is really this idea or the problem of scale by time, right? It's like you don't have now extra time that you can dedicate to oral assessment. So there's a trade-off here if you're trying to facilitate it really quickly. I think that the automation or the allure of automation helps to solve for that. But if you're going to do it and keep yourself in the loop, just to keep in mind that it will, this is a high cost. If it's 100 students, you want to talk to them for 5 minutes each. That's 500 additional minutes of assessment time that need to be dedicated to capturing oral assessment. So that is the trade-off. In your learning management systems, I have Moodle on the left and Canvas on the right, but it is likely that with one setting change on your permissions, you can give students the ability to record directly into any text editor. That could be during a quiz, that could be during, that could be a submission upload. So I give a PDF of my written work, but I also record some questions that are provided to me in a timed environment or something like that, paired with like a secure exam browser. I would think is you could increase the validity of those assessments. But there are tools already in your learning management systems that may facilitate this as well. If you're not ready to kind of move on to other programs, or if you don't have the availability of Poodle. Also, I mentioned Zoom. One of the problems would be the coordination of how do I get one-on-ones with my students. There is I'll make a plug for a paid version or a paid plugin from BrainStation 23 where you can coordinate. It's called the interview plugin, but it could be used for oral assessment as well. It connects to the gradebook. You can use it with a free account for Zoom. So in a sense, it'll take your class roster, it will let the students, or it will kind of organize the students and schedule them all a slot. The students access that through Moodle, and they're connected as well. So lots of different options that you can use for doing this. It's just another image of the kind of the scheduling time for students. So it's just 10-minute slots, but another option. Okay, so that was everything that we had. We did pretty good, Justin. We have about 8 minutes left scheduled, but I know that people are just getting their day started, or some are actually ending their day.
We have one question. It came as a direct message from
Sure.
Thomas. Yes. Should I read that?
Yeah, please. If you could read it first.
Thomas asks, hey, 2 questions. Can you integrate with other LMSs besides Moodle, e.g. via LTI or XAPI? So that would be like Canvas or Blackboard or D2L, what they call Brightspace. Currently, no. Actually, it's just for Moodle. But we've been working kind of quite steadfastly towards being able to integrate minilesson into LTI. So hopefully this year it will be available in Canvas and other LMSs. Thomas, if you're interested, please send me an email, because the last time we did this, we didn't have a great Canvas network. It was a bit hard for us to find testers. So if you're on another LMS, please send me what LMS it is and your email, and I'll be in touch with you. And the other question that Thomas asked was, are languages available to limited, or can every language be trained? Actually, it's we work with about 20 to 30 different languages. We don't train them. We use kind of off-the-shelf technology for speech recognition, and the large LLMs like OpenAI, they handle multiple languages very well. So the answer to that is we work with most mainstream languages and a lot of the minor ones as well.
Awesome. Another question that came in is, what about kind of privacy security of the like the student information and the actual text or the audio that students are creating?
Yeah. So related to the previous answer, we submit, we use kind of the OpenAI and the some of the DeepSeek and some of these other providers. So we basically, our privacy is basically their privacy. So what they promise to do with students' data is what we can do as well. We don't host our own large language models or anything like that. So that's the answer to that question. But we'd like to integrate closely with the Moodle AI subsystem so that schools could implement their own large language models or their own AI. And so we're working towards doing that. We just need the Moodle AI subsystem to catch up a little bit to some of the features that we offer, so that we can just route those requests to the school if they are interested in hosting their own providers.
Awesome. I think I would ask you one final question as a sign off. Is if you, as we've talked about this, is like what suggestions do you have, Justin, for teachers that are looking to get started with kind of oral activities, oral assessment in the classroom?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of kind of like you mentioned it yourself, Joe. Some of the low hanging fruit. There are there's low hanging fruit. There's easy ways to get started with, which is the tools that are already in your LMS system. You can just use those to build, for example, students do a daily, what did I do today, kind of in English, and send that to the teacher, and they can reply to it, or to submit answers to questions, via an oral format. I'm losing my words. So there are those kind of like very basic kind of like, or using the existing tools that you have to get started methods, and we can go a long way with those, because as we saw when I was talking about what we can do with just simple transcription, which is available in most places now, you can build really quite useful activities out of those. But again, you can use Poodle because there's a free trial. You can get in touch with me and I can hook you up. And other tools like H5P also have audio submissions and other features as well that you can hook up. So I think go to one of the forums like Moodle forums or the Canvas forums, talk a little bit about what you want to do, and I'm sure that you can be enabled in that way.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. I don't see any other questions, so I want to thank our audience, and I want to thank you, Justin, for sharing all of your experience and the tools that you've made, and kind of the evolution of oral assessment and activities that have happened on your watch, and kind of given a preview of what's possible these days. I'm really that the mini lesson activity with the audio chat is like that. I'm floored by the potential for that as an activity for students. I think is a really, really wonderful way to engage students in a different modality, whether you're using that for assessment or just for practice. But I think that's the has a lot of promise. So thank you very much. I'll end the webinar. Yeah, I appreciate you, Justin. And now I suppose you can go to your next meeting or potentially have enjoy the rest of your evening.
Have a nightcap, yeah. All right, thanks very much, everybody, for coming. My email is justin@poodle.com. Just send a message to Joe if you need the email and you forgot it. And happy to answer all your questions and talk to you if you have something to say.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.